What is your name, ma'am?
My name is Jennifer Blum.
All right, ma'am, what is it you'd like to say about the sentencing issue?
I'd like to say that it's hard to understand fear unless you've actually experienced it. I spent all but 3 years of my adult life living in fear, all the time trying to keep my head together and be strong enough to survive and raise my sons. I feared the man I lived with. I feared the man that claimed he loved me like no other. You promised Brian to protect me, and you were the only person who ever wanted to hurt me. I had no one to protect me from you. I knew early on that I wasn't getting away from you. You made sure of that. I lived 13 years of my life in survival mode, and that's how I got by day to day. There are many nights that I questioned that I would even be alive to see the next day. I can't count the amount of days that I was able to scoop my boys up fast enough to escape you in that house. I am very aware of what you're capable of. In fact, you made sure I was aware of that to keep my fear alive. I stayed quiet and suffered silently to protect the people I knew and loved. No one was safe. You threatened me with death to my closest loved ones. You ruined so many relationships I had with friends and family in fear that they would see what you were doing to me and try to help. You warned me what would happen if I had ever gone to help. You brainstormed me into believing that there was no help, and if I had gone for help, there was no place that I could run or hide that you couldn't find me. That fear is what kept me silent. That fear is what stopped me from getting help. On the morning of September 1st, 2014, when our son Hunter brought me that horrific phone call of you outlining how you were going to kill us, I saw that same fear in him. You had successfully put that fear in all of us. We fear for our lives. I had done it for so long, but there before me was my son, scared of his own father. Not only because of the words you spoke, but because of everything he had witnessed throughout the years. Even still, that fear you instilled in me kept me in the police department station parking lot for 45 minutes, crying my eyes out, not knowing if I was making the right decision, not knowing if getting help was possibly the last thing I would ever do. There have been so many questions asked of us. Finding the strength to relive what we have fought so hard to forget has been our biggest challenge. It's been very hard having to face the impact this has had on our sons. When Hunter was asked how long he has seen his father abusing his mother, he replied, "As long as I can remember." He admitted to not sleeping at night due to all of his father's screaming. He remembered things I worked so hard to forget. He remembers you asking me which wall I wanted my head splattered on. He also remembers you walking into a room that I was sitting in and saying that looking at me made you want to slit my throat. He remembers all the times you put your hands around my neck, suspending me from the ground. He saw me gasping for air. He saw my face changing colors. He admitted that he could not sleep at night knowing whether his mother would wake up the next day. You have been able to convince your family that my sons and I are liars. How dare you take the hell you have put us through away from us by calling us liars. You insulted us so much that your mother, their grandmother, went as far as to demand that your sister convince me not to testify, that it would be in my best interest to drop these charges, that this was my fault. I instigated you, and that's why I got what I deserved. It was easier for your mother to ignore what happened to us than to face and admit that she had raised a monster, and instead of getting him the help he needed, she pretended it wasn't happening. She chose to blame me instead of helping us. You blamed me. You said it was my fault, and I always deserved it. Well, what about Cheryl, Jackie, and Chrissy, who were all abused before me? And what about Nicole and Heather, who have been abused after me? We all deserved it. You are one man. We are 6 women, and somehow it has all been our fault. I know now that it is not my fault. I know now that it is not me. The last conversation you had with Hunter, you called him a pussy and a snitch. You called a 12-year-old boy a snitch for finally having the courage to tell me what was going on at your house and the consistent abuse towards your wife. You called him a snitch and a pussy for protecting himself and his little brother from having to endure watching another woman suffer at your hands. As his parents, it is one of our many jobs to protect our children. Our son Hunter grew up trying to protect me. He grew up protecting his little brother from having to see what he wished he never had. Hunter is not a pussy, nor is he a snitch. He is brave, and he has more courage than I could have ever imagined. Because of you, he grew up far too fast. You took his innocence, you took his childhood, and you will never serve enough time to make up for all he's lost. It wasn't my idea for Hunter to come forward. I didn't want him involved. He insisted that he had a voice, and he needed to be heard, and I didn't take that away from him. He has been seriously affected by what he has been subjected to, and if he needed to speak out, I wasn't going to stop him. By wanting a plea, you have once again taken our voices. And I understand you don't want to hear what you've done. We don't want to live with the nightmares you created for us, but we can't forget them. He is here today because he deserves to hear you admit your guilt. This is the closest sorry he will ever get from you, and he deserves the acknowledgement of what you have done. I asked Hunter if there was anything he wanted me to say on his behalf that I hadn't. Hunter said he wanted Brian's wife, Heather, to know that he and Mason really liked her, and that it was very hard for him to see her going through what she saw me go through for all those years. And if Heather were here, I would be addressing her, but to her I say, Heather, I want you to know that my sons talked very good about you. They enjoyed the short time they spent with you, and I appreciate the kindness and love you gave them. It was too hard for my boys to watch and hear the all too familiar screams and cries for help. If I can say one thing to her, it would be that it is not her fault. And that is all.
Anything else you'd like to say, ma'am?
No, thank you, sir.